Welcome to Fraud Friday. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking loan fraud, bankers, public officials, and borrowers who got caught. Maybe some of those who didn't. Hey, we're going to do something different. Delaney and Lance, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Happy summer solstice. We are going to play a quick video that we played in Lance's webinar yesterday about mandatory fraud reporting. And SBA did a good job with this. Anna, take it away.
As a resource and ally for small businesses, the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of the Inspector General, known as OIG, is here to protect small business owners, SBA lending partners, the government, and the general public. We are an independent office within SBA, and we work hard to ensure public funds are going to eligible small businesses and used as Congress intended. OIG focuses on preventing and investigating reports of fraud, waste, and abuse. Fraud is typically motivated by a desire for personal gain. Waste is often due to mismanagement. Abuse is using a resource for something other than its intended purposes. All three of these issues harm the public's trust, and they ultimately hurt the small business community as resources and opportunities are limited. To protect small business funding, it's important to report any suspected cases of fraud, waste, or abuse. If an activity seems suspicious, report it. OIG will handle the investigation and determine whether there was wrongdoing. If they investigate and find nothing, the investigation is closed. But if they do find something, your report will ensure funds go to the small businesses that truly need it. Reporting suspicious activity to OIG is easy and can be done anonymously. You can submit a report by visiting the hotline page at sba.gov/OIG hotline. If you'd prefer to report via postal mail, a mailing address is available online. Stopping fraud, waste, or abuse is the responsibility of every employee, every lending partner, and the general public. Don't hesitate to contact the SBA's Instructor General if you suspect wrongdoing. Reporting is your way to help the SBA power the American dream, because at SBA, we make small business our business.
SBA lenders, borrowers, and others must notify both OCRM and the SBA Office of Inspector General of any information that indicates fraud or illegal activity that may have occurred. Must means must. Lance, we talked about this. We don't know what happens if you don't do it. We don't have a good answer for that, but it needs to be reported. Give a little elevator synopsis of what you talked about yesterday and what people on the call need to know if you're a lender, a borrower, or another.
Well, I think especially for the participant lender guys, fraud has been around for a long time. It is not something that was created by the pandemic, although it kind of seems like it was created by the pandemic. But fraud has been around for a long time, and it's always been the participant lender's responsibility when fraud is identified in the SBA lending process to report it to the Office of Inspector General. And Bob, I go back and there's forms and procedures. An example, the SBA Form 159. Where do we think that came from? That came from the fact that there were fraudulent fees being charged to borrowers. There are processes in the SBA lending that have been created to prevent fraud. So fraud's been around, but the pandemic certainly magnified it. The webinar, this is a new webinar that we did to do a couple of things, Bob, to help participant lenders know how to identify fraud and to make sure they understand the requirements that SBA has for a participant lender to understand how to report fraud in the SBA lending process. So, it was a fun webinar, Bob and Delaney. It was a lot of fun. And of course, Delaney writes about fraud every week, but it was a fun webinar. And like I said, we do have a responsibility as an SBA participant lender. If we see fraud, it needs to be reported.
SBA is your partner. And you need to, as a good partner, you need to disclose this stuff. Now you have, the question came up, hey, how do we know if this check was photoshopped, if it's fraudulent. You do not have to make that determination. It is simply, if you suspect it, send an email off to Okram, send it to Inspector General, and move on. Lance, you said you get almost zero feedback on these referrals, but it's the right thing to do.
Well, there's a procedure for reporting suspected fraud to the Office of Inspector General, and sometimes you will get a request back for additional information, but a lot of the referrals that we have made that were related to fraud, I never heard a thing back. But I also know in several of the cases that the individuals ended up getting proven to have committed fraud and ended up getting prosecuted. So, but it's important to understand and know how to identify fraud and what to do when you see it.
Lance, you post Father's Day, you need to be the proud papa of Delaney, who is studying this, and I know she's going to be a fabulous. I can't even pronounce what she's studying. Forensics, linguistics, ethical.
Forensic linguistics. There's a lot of ethical concerns, yeah.
No, so that's great for her. But Delaney, there is a common thread of these. Addiction rears its ugly head in terms of drugs, in terms of gambling. You're going to talk about that in our next story. The imposter syndrome, I would say that was Carrie Agee's downfall, where she wanted to be someone who she wasn't. Chris Roglieri, definitely, he wanted to be a big, high-profile mover and shaker, and he wasn't. So we see these common threads that come up, and we're talking both bankers, lenders, and also borrowers. Delaney, what gambling took down Mr. Padilla in Oklahoma? What happened here?
Yeah, Mr. John Padilla out in Oklahoma at BancFirst. He ran into a little trouble. He pled guilty to a $1 million loan fraud scheme. Now, at this bank, he worked as an SVP and a commercial loan officer, and he had delegated authority of up to $350,000. And he did use this to his advantage. What he did was he would recruit his friends and said, help me get this loan. I'm going to be investing this in a real estate venture. You don't really have to do much. You will get a profit from this. I will make all the loan payments. They didn't have to partake in this for the most part, besides helping him with the actual application. And he did not use that on a real estate venture. That was used for gambling instead, to pay off gambling debts and to continue this habit. And there was one particular case they listed in the criminal complaint, so I will talk about that one. There was one individual, they were getting a $58,000 equipment loan. And apparently a common thread was that he was claiming there was collateral that did not exist. In this case, it was a 2015 Bobcat E35i compact excavator and a 2015 Bobcat 418 T4. I'm not sure what these were, but these did not exist. This loan was completely unsecured.
Absolutely. An excavator.
Is that good collateral, Lance?
Oh, an excavator would be exceptional, Bob and Delaney. To give you, for instance, behind the house here, if I could span the camera over there, we had a lot of our woods cleared out nicely, and they used an excavator for that. So it's a common, valuable piece of equipment that construction companies use. So it's good collateral.
It would be great collateral if it actually existed. Yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering if Mr. Padilla, guys, just kind of a local thing. Lawton, Oklahoma is only about 3 hours away, and there are many Cherokee casinos between here and Lawton, Oklahoma. I'm just wondering what type of gambling he was doing.
That I couldn't answer for.
Lance, you're an executive. You've been with a number of institutions. What advice do you give to junior lending officers to keep them on the straight and narrow?
The interesting thing about some of the stories we've heard on Fraud Friday about commercial lenders, I've had anywhere from $350,000. At one institution I worked for, I had $750,000 worth of authority, which meant I could approve my own loans up to that level, but I was more careful with the loans that I did under my own authority. I crossed the T's, dotted the I's, double checked the numbers on the ones I did under my own authority, because, I knew I would be judged based on the performance of that part of my portfolio. So, for a young lender, that's something I would certainly want to tell them. Those loans that you're doing under your own authority that don't require committee approval, don't require some sort of upper level approval, those are the ones you're going to want to be most careful with. And you're going to want to make sure you follow procedures, cross the T's, dot the I's, and do them correctly.
The strategy of the next score will make us whole never works, because the person says, hey, that was easy, I'm going to do it again. Or they get themselves in a hole. In this case, you can see you have 1,000, which comes 2,000, and you double it, and then 4, and all of a sudden 4 becomes 10, and 10 becomes 25. And
oh, you saw this a lot, Bob, in the real estate crisis that we had back in 08, 09, 10. A developer would get a construction loan for a house and not have it completely finished, but have spent all the money. And then he'd have a new construction loan on a different house. And he's like, I only need like $10,000 to finish this house. I'm going to take a draw here and put it on this house. And then they would continue to do that. And it's like stair step. And eventually it got too big to fix.
Yeah, too big to fix. I like that, Delaney. We've seen that over and over.
Absolutely.
What did
before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt. I do have a question that I just want to confirm. It's my own curiosity, because there are some things I'm unfamiliar with. Of course, loan proceeds should not be used on gambling, but in this situation, you're typically not supposed to do loans when you have a personal interest, like friends, especially if you were conforming based on your authority, right?
It's not out of the ordinary for someone to do a loan for a friend with their authority, as long as they're creditworthy. It would be out of the ordinary to do a family member, but most institutions are not going to prohibit you from lending money to a friend who has a great credit score, a great project, and good collateral.
Delaney, you bring up a great question, because banking is based on relationships. Character matters. Bankers get to know these entrepreneurs. They understand their business, and then they come to respect how they operate their business. And they obviously become definitely colleagues, perhaps friends in that. But I agree with Lance. But that's also a good person, Lance. I assume if you have a $750,000 loan authority, you're not going to go out and just do it blindly. I assume you're going to make it a collaborative effort and sort of bring other people into the process. As, hey, I just want you guys, what do you think about this? I assume that's what a good politician would do.
Oh, absolutely. That's why financial institution team members, professionals, have to be of the highest integrity. When you start, there's couple types of authority at a bank. You have incidental authority and you have lending authority. And both are situations where, Bob, in my circumstance, I use the utmost care anytime I was using my own authority. Yeah. If I probably followed the rules twice as hard when I was using my authority, then if I were bringing a loan to committee, there were 6 other people to sign on.
But good to bring this full circle, Delaney, but also in that conversation, you're friendly with someone, you need to be very clear in your linguistics communication of what is allowed and what the line is. And both sides need to understand no is no. And here's the line. And this is what I can do. And this is what I cannot do. And absolutely, if you're $10,000 short on building out a spec house, you need to come up with that through an investor, through the loan for some other way, you are not going to take it from another loan project and spiral down that path. So it's you have to be a very you have to communicate and speak very clearly, and everyone needs to understand what the rules are. And you need to say, learn, and you link. I would also tell junior loan officers, you need to learn how to say no.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering my question. I'm a curious
and we tied it in with what you're learning. I love that. It's just, do you get credit for this?
I wish I would be sending that to my professors for sure.
All right, what do we got here?
We have another bank individual. This was a former vice president and manager at a New York branch of Popular Bank. This individual just was found guilty. And this fraud scheme, there were 7 other individuals, I believe, who had already pled guilty to wire fraud. But they were fabricating PPP and idle applications. So on these PPP applications, it contained false statements, fabricated loan and tax documents, typical with what we've seen. In addition, this individual also submitted her own idle loan application. Now, something that was a little bit interesting that they included in the press release is at her desk, they found handwritten notes. And I'm not sure if these were affirmations, some manifestation for those who are familiar with it, because I can't imagine why else you would write these, but I will read them off. I am making more than enough money. Money comes to me easily. I am grateful I make $15K every month. I have an extra $5,000 every month. These were all found at her desk.
And Delaney, I don't know if I'm pretty sure you're not old enough to remember this, but there was a Saturday Night Live skit on Stuart Smalley. For those of us who are a little older, you'll remember. And what you're saying, he would do affirmations. I'm tall enough. I am good enough. I am happy enough. That's almost like what she was doing, except she was also leaving a trail for the investigators to convict her of fraud.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Exhibit A, why we do not do pop culture references in these shows.
I would love to hear from all the people that remember Stuart Smalley on Saturday night.
All 2 of them. All right.
2.
Moving on,
right.
Delaney.
We do have a question that came in. Should I go ahead and read that? Sorry, I'm beating Anna to it, so I'm sure she has.
You know what? Let's take the question, and we'll hold off Mr. Lung until next week. Sure, we'll take the question.
All right. Somebody asked, can a business owner pay themselves with SBA idle proceeds, personal loans made to the company before the pandemic?
So idle loan proceeds.
And then they paid off and then they use that to pay off a personal loan. Is that what you're saying, Delaney?
I believe so.
Say a credit card debt. Lance, I have my American Express, $15,000 balance. I have a bunch of stuff on that, but I take my idle proceeds and pay off my American Express card. Is that a fraud that should be reported?
They should not do that. The way idle proceeds should be used for business working capital. Now, business working capital could be paid to an individual as part of payroll. And then that person puts it in their personal bank account and writes a check to their American Express. That's okay, but it shouldn't go directly from the business account.
But I guess my test would be if I have to ask the question, is this fraud or not, and I'm unclear about it,
it might be.
It might be, but I would also, but it may not be. So I don't know if I would report that and clog up the system. I think what the OIG wants is if it went to very blatant, for example, the $15,000 went back to an ex-wife for an alimony payment, that could be problematic. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, an example, Bob, during PPP, I would have people call and say, well, my ex-girlfriend got her hair done and went to the spa for a massage with her PPP loan proceeds. And so PPP loan proceeds were used to pay payroll. It is possible that person injected the PPP loan proceeds into their business, wrote themselves a payroll check, deposited that into their personal account, and then went and got their hair done and got a massage.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
I would use the test is you'll know it when you see it. If it's gray area.
Well, it's like the financial statement, Bob, that you brought up on the webinar yesterday where you showed it to me. Maybe we looked at it last week, where fraud often
jumps out at you.
It jumps out.
Yeah.
You'll know when it's fraud.
Yeah. I don't think you need to be clogging up OIG with a bunch of gray area stuff. So, Well, very good. Delaney, good reporting. Lance, as always, thank you. Thank you for joining us today for Fraud Friday, so you can stop criminals from stealing from your bank.
Have a nice weekend.